school structures or whatever like that. And unfortunately, like there was zero response from side government, right? And that's too bad because like Aaron brought it up again in his speech, right? And like he harped on it a lot. Like so it was a big thing that they flagged and they consistently asked for engagement with, right? So Evelyn, you didn't engage with it at all, right? You didn't respond to it. But like Otto, you didn't respond to it either, even though it was the speech that, like, it was the last speech too, they mentioned it twice. So like it really warranted some attention, even if it was minimal. And there are, you know, honestly there are responses to that, that you can give. Like a lot of public and private schools, like systems like tailor themselves to those kinds of things. Like Thomas Haney is an example of a school that like is not a conventional.
Yeah, for disabilities, yeah.
Like no, but like there's schools that specialize in certain stuff like
Yeah,
that. So
we
like
do.
there's arguments to be said there. We didn't hear anything like that. So Otto, you gave great analysis as far as the narrow viewpoints and stuff like that, and how it's beneficial to like have these kids exposed to a lot of viewpoints. I thought you started off the debate great, but again it degraded and it was explicitly exposed that everybody in the room wasn't aware that homeschool kids actually interact with other people a lot, like a normal amount. So that was really problematic. And then Evelyn, I felt as though you were preparing a little bit for like a different response from opposition. You talked about bullying a little bit, and that wasn't something that came up in Brett's speech, so that was a little weird. But I think you, Evelyn, you made like the strongest point for side government at the end of the day, the one that stood, which was like the demand for peer-to-peer communication, and because opposition like didn't talk about the fact that homeschools have this interaction, like it was just a pillar for your side, even though it was like a false assumption, for as far as the round goes, and like the truth of the round was like it was something that fell on your side. So Otto, you were good to catch on that and like mention that in your whip speech and focus on that. However, like it was just like false, right? As far as individual points, again, Otto, you had good analysis. Unfortunately, like it was just mostly assumption based, which is like problematic because like I expect from you to have like a degree of knowledge a little bit based on like who you socially interact with. Brett.
Who do I? Well,
Brett, moving on. Brett, like unfortunately, like you continued that assumption about like the social interaction thing. Although like you worked really well trying to like walk around the supposed barrier that homeschool kids have. And I thought your analysis about like Skype as a force was good, a change in culture which was like generally good. Like I thought it was good. Like you refuted all their points about like the validity of homeschooling education, right? Like you said, like no, they have curriculum, they're regulated. It's not like a gong show where they can do whatever they want. Teach your kids about like dinosaurs and like vampires coexisting or anything like that, right? Like you did a good job with that. The autism point obviously stood completely throughout the round. So I thought you did okay. However, like effectively a lot of the points Evelyn did engage with, like I think put a shadow of a doubt on the social point. The curriculum thing was just not discussed at all after that. So it was throwaway. And like I felt like the round didn't really go to many places until like Aaron's speech, which like he labeled it the myth of antisocial, and like he just like really focused on this thing about like the non-conventional kids, and like he made his entire speech about that, which like ultimately won the debate because like there's no response from side proposition about that point. So yeah, and getting into the whip speeches, Brett, you did a better whip speech in this round than you did last round. I felt you gave more analysis and you labeled things in a more organized way. It was kind of big impacted, like you said, like really big, sometimes pretty exaggerated things in your speech. However, this time like it was reinforced a little bit better for reasons, and you gave more analysis. So generally, I was pretty happy with it. It was a very strong whip speech, but like your whole debate was generally from a pretty strong stance, so like it made sense. As far as your whip speech, Otto, like you like only had 3 minutes and you had to refute too much things, right? Like your entire whip speech was essentially like trying to refute things. And just like some of it worked out for you, but like because you had to stretch yourself out so much, at the same time none of it worked out for you, right? Because like you pointed out to the things that like were wrong on side opposition, but you didn't have time to tell me why they were wrong, right? So like explicitly it's like, okay, so they talked about the internet, but like the internet is not accountable. They talked about students having these textbooks, but like you can't expect these kids to learn themselves, and like the parent thing is like limitations, whatever I just said. And like you literally were just like trying to check things off to try to like radically win this debate when like that can't happen. Like you can't win a debate entirely out of one speech. And like it really didn't come close because unfortunately everybody in the room like made this assumption about homeschooling kids and it was problematic.
Probably would have gone better if we actually had somebody here who did homeschool.
Yeah. Well, I was a little surprised because like I knew Erin and Evelyn, we both have some experience with the context, so I expected a little bit more clarification in that. Evelyn, I thought you were really good to talk, like I said, you were really good to talk about the demand for real world interaction for preparation. I thought that was good, but like generally like some of the other points in your speech were problematic because they were based on assumptions. Like at one point in your speech you explicitly said like people go to homeschool because they're lazy and that's the only reason, which like is not true and is like semi-offensive. And at the very least they needed like more analysis, right? But like I felt as though you were a little bit more comfortable in this round than in your first round, which I think is good. It's progressive. Cool. So are there any questions before we get into our final round?
I hate you. You're ridiculous.
All right.
Shrug.